Hey everybody, welcome to myRE360's Be Your Own General Contractor. My name is Adonis Lockett, and in this module, we're going to be talking the foundation, the starting point, the basics. So let's start with how we got here. Have you ever reached out to your general contractor, told them, hey, I'm concerned about how long the project is taking. Hey, there's something that I really need to do. Or hey, I just have overall concerns about what's going on. And his response is, your urgent request is at the top of my list. We've all been there. So after going through that a handful of times, you've probably made the decision that it's time for you to be your own general contractor and manage your own project. Now, I want to pause and say to all of my general contracting buddies in the industry, this education series is not to bash you. We love you. You are the backbone of the real estate investing industry. However, there are instances where investors have had run-ins with general contractors multiple projects over, may have had a really bad experience or something in between that has caused them to think about being their own general contractor and managing their own project. This education series, I'm going to help you as the investor understand how to go about managing your own project, being your own GC, and all of the things that you need to consider. So again, to my GC buddies, we love you. We don't want you to take anything offensive to what we're about to say. Now, with that said, to the investors who are thinking about being your own general contractor, let me first tell you, do not be nervous when you're thinking about heading down this road. As long as you are properly prepared, you will be successful at being your own GC and managing your own project. Now, with that said, let's jump right in. Now, the first thing we need to do is make sure you understand the difference between a general contractor and a handyman. A general contractor is responsible for the day-to-day oversight of the entire construction project. A general contractor will typically manage all vendors, trades, and all parties that come in and out of the project. They typically will communicate all of the information involved to all parties, including the investor. They often will manage materials, permits, inspections, and schedules. A GC will typically manage all the compensation that is to be paid to the subcontractors and vendors they are working with. A general contractor has a lot of responsibilities. Now, that is not to be confused with a handyman. A handyman is a person who typically does odds and ends jobs. They can often be competent in a variety of small skills, jobs, or even trades. That's pretty much it. A handyman is exactly that. A handyman who does onesie-twosie things in between larger projects. Now let's jump into the pros and cons of being your own general contractor. Let's start with the pros. Obviously, the first thing is you're going to save money. Now, a GC will typically make between 15 and 30% of the total cost of the project in the form of a GC fee. Now, that is the typical industry standard for GC compensation. You will also be able to set the quality of standards to your subcontractors. That means you can clearly convey to them what your expectations are for the work that they're doing. In addition, you will also be able to dictate the flow of the project. That means that you will be able to directly control when a subcontractor starts, when they're estimated to complete, and when the next one comes on the job. So if you've ever worked with a general contractor in the past and you visited your project and saw that your project is sitting for days or weeks at a time, you now will be able to control the flow of the schedule and who's in and out of the project at all times. In addition, you will also be able to receive transparency from all of the subcontractors on any issues that may arise. Now, a lot of concerns that have come up with investors when working with general contractors is that a small issue may have been inflated to a larger issue by the GC, which resulted in a much larger price tag than initially anticipated. Other instances have been larger issues were downplayed and the seriousness of that issue was kind of marginalized, and you as the investor did not know how big of an issue actually existed, thus which in turn costing you more money and potentially losing time on your project. You lose all of that when you're dealing with the subcontractors directly, because you are talking to them and there's transparency about what is happening directly from the subcontractor to you. And a lot of the concern is misinformation from a middleman. Now think about this. Humans are humans, and sometimes a message can get changed when going from person to person. So if you've ever played that game Telephone, telephone where the message starts with person 1 and by the time it makes it to person 10, it's a completely different message. If you've never played Telephone, you're probably born after 1995 and you have no idea what I'm talking about. I guess I'm pretty much aging myself at this point. But with that said, sometimes misinformation happens unintentionally, and when communication goes from one person to the next, that information may be expanded or downplayed, which ultimately may be to your detriment as the investor. So you no longer have to deal with misinformation from a middleman. Now let's talk about the cons of being your own GC. As I mentioned, a general contractor has a lot of responsibility. So first thing, one of the primary cons of being your own GC is that it is very time and energy intensive. You also have to be knowledgeable of every aspect of the project. And what that means is a lot of times when your subcontractors have a crossroads on whether you go Avenue A or Avenue B, they're going to expect you to have a general understanding of the impacts and ramifications of choosing option A or option B. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the repercussions or the drawback to choosing one or the other, you can typically ask your subcontractor to explain the pros and cons of each option. Now, even though they may make suggestions, often they're going to leave it to you to make the final decision. So it is your responsibility as a general contractor to have a degree of competency in all of the trades being done to make sure you can provide clear direction on any of your subcontractors that are in your project. Now, in addition, you are 100% responsible for everything. That means you are responsible for timelines, for the workflow, for compensation. If there's any issues, everyone's going to look to you to fix it and course correct. So there's a lot of responsibility that comes in being your own GC, especially in a larger project. You're also going to be responsible for coordinating permits or inspections by the city or city officials. So that means that the time that it takes to reach out and coordinate, meet any inspectors, you're going to be the one responsible to do that. Now, it's very often that you may bring on a project manager to assist, but as a general contractor, if their subcontractors are not available to meet inspectors or pull permits, you yourself are going to be responsible to do just that. And finally, and sometimes a little bit more challenging, you're going to be responsible for coordinating all of your subcontractors and trade services. You're going to be responsible for coordinating their schedule, their start time and completion time, their compensation, and then not only that, the overall flow of each sub and which can work in sequence and concurrent. So you are going to be responsible for making sure that not only the subcontractors are in and out in a proper time frame, you also got to make sure that you can coordinate multiple schedules all in once. So it is a very time and energy extensive process, but that is one thing you need to be considering when being your own general contractor. So to recap, we've talked about some of the basics that you should consider when being your own GC. We talked about the pros and cons that you need to be mindful of, and we also talked about the responsibilities that come with being your own GC and managing your own project. Now, throughout this education series, we're going to be jumping into the intricacies of being your own GC. So make sure you buckle up, grab a pen and paper, because we're going to go through a ton of information, but we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. So you guys sit tight. I'll be seeing you in the next module, and make sure that you click the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel. You can find me on social media at Adonis Lockett on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll see you soon.